Imagine having access to a tribe of mentors, experts in the biggest questions in tech. This is Making Revenue Tick.
So we've actually just finished recording the episode. James, for people who are just joining, what are they going to learn about in the next 60 minutes or so?
So hopefully they'll learn a little bit around how to 10x their sales productivity using AI. As part of that, they'll learn about sort of my personal journey that I've gone on with AI and the change management involved in this journey, how to bring your teams along on the journey, how to get ideas stimulated around your business, around sort of the step changes you can make, and then kind of how to apply it to how you recruit talent and bring talent with the right mindset into the business.
Amazing. I love it. I think they're also going to learn about how the goal of growing by 20 and 30%, whilst it's very admirable and hard to do in this market, is actually the enemy of great. And how if you can get everyone in your business to have a 10x mentality, then the magic will start to happen, because probably they're stuck in a world of, if we can just continue to improve at the rate we're doing, then we're going to be successful. But what if we could become 10 times more effective, 10 times better, spend way more time in front of customers? How much more successful could we be? So without further ado, let's roll the VT. Hello and welcome to Making Revenue Tick. We've got a special today, which is all about 10x thinking, which is a topic I absolutely love. And I've got who I would consider to be one of the people that's really walking the talk in this area in the world right now in technology, which is James Smith. James, how you doing?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yourself?
Very well. Very well. I'm glad that we got introduced by your good friend, Joe.
Yeah.
He's just joined Salesloft, right? But you worked together. Where was it you worked together?
We worked together at Tableau. So when I joined Tableau, Joe was heading up our enablement function. So he taught me a load of things when I first joined there.
So it's all Joe's credit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, amazing. So look, for our listeners, we had a pre-chat and it was one of my favorite conversations I've had so far this year, because I think that everything that you're building at ThoughtSpot and the way that you're thinking about life is totally aligned to the books that I read, the type of things that every business tells me that they want to achieve. But it's quite far away from the traditional thinking around how we go and scale SaaS and how we go and scale performance. So I guess what would be useful to understand is, for the listeners today, what are you working on?
So the main thing that I'm trying to do, the main sort of focus of my mind outside of the day-to-day of running the business is how do we 10x our sales team's productivity? How do we really dial up our sales team's productivity by doing various different things, using artificial intelligence being a key driver of that, but focusing in on our ICP a lot clearer than we are, and really trying to reimagine our sales process and the way that we engage with organizations to see if we can step change areas of our business to drive 10x productivity within the sales function.
Yeah, it made me like, even like it's like a leap, right? It's a leap forward, isn't it? You know, because I think there is like most people are taught step change, and I know that we were having a conversation about the type of growth that everyone would say is success in business, particularly in this market where most revenue organizations are missing quota, most reps are under target. The average tenure of a senior revenue leader is like 17 months, probably ever decreasing. Hitting 10, 20%, 30% growth in most businesses would be considered success. But in your business, that's not the mindset. Tell us a bit more about where this idea of making a massive leap has come from, where most of the market's just trying to stay at least, you know, in line with the growth goals that they've been experiencing sort of pre-COVID.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, you know, achieving 20, 30, 40% growth rates in this market is a very very good result to be delivering, and isn't easy. So this isn't me sort of thinking that this is an easy journey to go on. But where it came from my CEO challenging me. We were going through the process to plan for our next financial year, and I kind of put together a financial year plan around how I'd been doing it for the last 3, 4, 5 years, which is, you've got a certain level of productivity, you add a certain level of headcount, you cut a certain number of territories, and that sort of equation adds up to the growth rate that you're trying to get to. But he really challenged me on, look, you're not delivering enough growth mindset in the way that you're thinking, and in particular with artificial intelligence, you're thinking about how AI can kind of help you incrementally grow, and you need to completely rethink your sales process with an AI lens to completely redesign and re-engineer it. And that's really where that challenging in the thinking allowed me to go on my own journey in sort of delving into, okay, what is possible with AI, and what benefits and gains could be delivered, and then sort of backwards engineered that into what gains do we think we can go after. When he first said, I think you should be going after like 10x productivity, I really I didn't think it was possible. I thought there's absolutely no way I could 10x the average productivity of each of my sales reps. But now I'm kind of a few months into the journey, I actually think we can, and it's just a matter of time. The question isn't whether we can or not. Like, we absolutely can. It's just, is it going to take us 12 months, 18 months, 3 years, 5 years? That's the bit that I think is open to debate. But I absolutely do think we can apply some first principles thinking and really, really step change what we're doing with applying AI and things like that.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because a lot of revenue leaders I speak to, they're all using AI, right? Everyone has Gemini, everyone has some sort of like audio, voice transcription. It's starting to get used, but how much is it being used to actually like bring genuine, massive business value rather than just make what we're already doing a bit easier and a bit faster? And I think a lot of people are still worried about it, like, do we give the keys over to this thing that we maybe won't be able to control? And how much power do we give to the reps versus like, how much is it was, this is what we're doing as a business and this is what you need to buy into. But you said something really fascinating that I want to just drill into a little bit, which is your initial reaction, right? So you prepared this big plan.
Yeah.
Your big year plan. Here's where we're going to go. It's all about growth. You must have been like quite proud of the plan. You put in a load of effort, and then you get told you're not thinking big enough. Tell us a bit more about like that conversation and how it actually went down.
It was a really difficult moment, actually, because you're absolutely right. I'd spent a load of time putting together a plan with my leadership team, and I felt like I was entering the meeting with, I'm going to deliver this plan, and he's going to sit back and he's going to go, "Wow, aren't you great?" And it was like the opposite of that. It was a really uncomfortable moment, because what he was doing is he was picking on an area that I was paying lip service to. Because then when anyone asked, do you use AI? Like, how often do you use AI? I'd say, oh yeah, I use it every day, because I use our product every day, and our product is AI, an AI enabled platform. So, because I use that every day, I'd say I used AI every day. But I hadn't really gone on that personal growth journey of like, how do I completely transform everything that I do with AI, and then also how do I then apply it to the leadership team that I have, and then the ICs beneath that. And so it was really uncomfortable, because he was poking at an area that was a vulnerability that I thought I'd done a pretty good job at hiding, which I obviously hadn't. And that's what great senior leaders do, right? That's what great leaders do, is they get you out your comfort zone, and that's where you grow the most. And not to sound too cliche, but like, I feel like I've grown tremendously over the last few months as a leader as a result of him poking me and making me feel uncomfortable, and then forcing me out of my comfort zone to go and do some thinking about this, go and research it, and down the rabbit hole I've gone on all the things that I now think are possible.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's the importance of a good question, It's like that you don't have to be like a shouty leader and, just be incredibly demanding with your standards to the point where people feel bad, like you make people feel small. You can attack a blind spot, and you can attack a sort of a gap in attitude or behavior without attacking the person. And the question of like, saying, hey, you're not thinking big enough about this, and, you're exposing this blind spot that you had around AI, it just reminds me of the other day, we Jacob Warwick, who we've had on the podcast a number of times, who's just a ridiculous leader and marketer and salesperson and executive coach. He asked me a question, which was, what's your AI tech stack? And I just remember seeing that question and thinking, oh, I don't want to answer that. Because like, honestly, it's like we use like Otter for transcription, then like, you know, Riverside for this podcast and Opus for some clips. And then obviously I'm using ChatGPT every day because we're taking all this long form content and turning it into like bite-sized chunks. But how much of it is automated? How much have I got AI agents like helping make the customer experience better, the candidate experience better, the whole process more clear, like using all the data to go and make better decisions? I wasn't. And it made me just go, I can't really answer that. So I just said, honestly, like, you know, very, very basic. But what he did then is teed me up with a conversation with his head of AI called Justin Parnell. And I've got a session now next week with Justin where he's going to help me to build my first AI agent.
Nice.
And I'm so excited. And it all came from the fact that he asked me this question that exposed a massive weakness in me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, it felt bad, you know, but I love it when you have people in your network, whether it's leader or like a challenge network or just your mentors, and they ask you questions that when you feel it, it's like the emperor's clothes. You feel like the tide's gone out and you've not got your shorts.
Yeah.
But then
it's
your
so uncomfortable, but it's great.
Yeah, exactly. How did you, which is quick, I know like this moment, I'm lasering in on, just I think it's so fascinating because it was like a big reframe around this big plan. You also said that your team were involved in building the plan. Of course they were, right? It's a collaborative thing. You're a VP of EMEA. How did the team react when you brought back this change from what they were probably expecting to them after your meeting?
So that was really interesting because that's when I have a coach, I have a professional coach as well. And I actually, after the meeting, rang him up and said, look, I've gone into this meeting with a plan that I thought was excellent and I've been exposed. And my natural instinct is to act as a bit of an umbrella and a bit of a shield to the team and, kind of tell them, oh no, everything's fine. And, while you go and kind of figure it out. And actually he encouraged me to actually know, you always talk about having a great leadership team. And I absolutely believe I've got a great leadership team. That's where this is an opportunity to trust them, and actually be open to them with the feedback that you did get, because you'll be amazed by what ideas that come up when you do articulate it to them. So he encouraged me to be like really transparent and open with the team, and which was great advice because through being transparent and open with the team, a load of ideas got spun up. So I sort of talked around, my own personal, I was pretty authentic with them about my own personal gaps in my thinking with AI, and the fact that, I'd then gone on a bit of an education process and actually now I'd completely shifted my thinking on, the gains that we could get if we applied AI across our whole sales process. And it was amazing to see both of them feel, I got the sense that there was a bit of a sigh of relief in the room, that a lot of people were kind of where I was in sort of playing a little bit of lip service. So it allowed them to sort of say, oh, finally someone said it. And actually, I can now be open with the fact that I've probably been playing lip service to this whole AI thing. But then also they all got pretty inspired and pretty forthcoming with a bunch of ideas of like, oh, well, actually, we've got this bit of our process. Have you thought about doing this thing? And actually, one of our sales leaders came up with a brilliant idea within about 2 minutes of an agent we could build to help us do a lot of our deal constructs when we're upselling customers. And that was an idea that I'd never thought about, building an agent there. And it was a really, again, that was a positive session, a positive meeting where I was being a bit vulnerable, I was being a bit open with them, but then also taking them on the journey that I'd started since that meeting. And they themselves sort of in that room went on a mini version of that journey. And it was a really, really positive meeting. We've actually got a whole bunch of follow-up in later on this week where we're doing a whole bunch of workshops around, with the workshop's called How Do We 10X Our sales team this year with AI. So they're all coming with a whole bunch of ideas, and we're going to do a workshop and then turn that into a hackathon and do a bunch of work around that.
Well, I love that. It reminded me so much of a book I read once called Scaling Up, which is like a Rockefeller habits book. And in that book, they talked about like ideas to go and bring innovation into your business. And one of them was called a FedEx Day. I think it was Atlassian used to do a thing called FedEx Days. And I believe this all came from the fact that like the idea of FedEx came from just a session where they used to give people the chance to go and create a business idea. So they would literally create like a space at a time where people can go and work on their own like side projects. And obviously Google famously do that, right? Like, Pixar and all these businesses came from just, people being given the chance to go and create it. And most of these Google Labs type projects come from that too. So you're creating a space away from the day-to-day, space away from targets and OKRs and quota for people to work on innovative ideas that align to the mission. I love that. Let's say that someone wanted to go and do that in their business today because they're going, well, I'd love to do this. I want to get my team to like be thinking about this problem with me, and let's go and leverage all of our collective intelligence and experience. None of us is smarter than all of us. How have you actually practically made it? How have you like engaged and enabled people to feel sort of safe and excited about bringing the best ideas that they've got towards helping?
So I think a huge amount of it is, so when you go on these journeys personally, you've got to always remember to take people with you, because you can get really excited about a new initiative, a new idea, and you get that excitement. If you're really going through a growth journey, your excitement should build as you go through it. The more you learn, the more excited you should understand that you've got to learn, and then the more excited you should get to go and learn that. That's what I think what growth journeys are all about. It's about, realizing you've got a gap and being excited by exploring that gap rather than fearful of it. And the more you go into that journey, the more excited you get about it, because you realize, oh wow, this is a huge capability that I'm gonna learn and be able to exploit that I didn't have before. And it's really easy to get really excited about something and then not bring the rest of the team with you. And we've all been in meetings where someone comes up with like something they're like really passionate about, but they skip to the end goal. And because of that, they lose like the room. They're sort of like, that was a bit of a weird idea that person brought in, and I didn't quite get why they were so passionate and excited by it. And it's definitely something that I made the mistake on early on in my career, where I was like, oh, we should do this thing, and didn't really bring people along on the journey. So a big thing that I've been focusing on is bringing people along in the journey. So that was like a really important part with the leadership team, about talking them through my own personal journey and why I think it's really important, in the world that we live in, with, fairly difficult macroeconomic environments, lots of shocks happening in the world, in software, people being asked to do more with less, march to profitability, all those types of things. I think it's really important for us to be thinking about how can we increase productivity. And I think AI can be a massive enabling driver of that. So it's really important to bring people along on that journey. So a lot of the work that I've done is to do that. So we've had like meetings where I've tried to educate them on that journey. I've actually recorded my journey in about 32-minute videos that I sort of sent out to people so they could see sort of that process I've been in and how my thinking's sort of evolved. Sent them a whole bunch of podcasts and articles that I've like been stumbling across, and Substack posts that I've been stumbling across as well, so that they can kind of go and go on that education. I think it's really important to understand that this journey is like a change. So much of it is change management, and so it's really important to bring people with you. And then it's about carving out, and then once people understand the importance of it and the impact it can have, actually carving off space to go and do something about it feels like an obvious thing. It doesn't feel like, oh, you're distracting me from my day-to-day here. I've got I've got this QBR to do, and I've got this sales to do, and, this target to hit. actually, if you brought them on that journey enough, they'll realize that it isn't just that there's something on the side, it's front and center and core to everything we do. And actually, if we can get really good at applying AI to our sales process, it's just going to make hitting all those targets and all those OKRs and all the things that feel like are the number 1, 2, and 3 priority that much easier. And so it doesn't feel like you're diverting them down a track that is a distraction. It actually feels like a real enabler to that journey. And so I think that's like a really key part of it. And then it's just about giving people the time and space and the right time to do that. And there's a bit of a skill in that in terms of like making sure it's at a time where there aren't a bunch of meetings, that you try and maybe do it in a space that is out of your office to like allow people to disconnect. Make sure that you've prepped people well to say, look, this is what I want you to enter the room with, and this is kind of the destination that we're trying to get to, and so people kind of know where they are on in that process whilst they're in the room. So there's a whole bunch of stuff like that, but I think it's about educating and taking them on that journey so they realize that it's actually the thing that's going to help their day to day rather than a distraction that you're trying to take them away from.
Yeah, it makes sense because people are busy, right? But it's like if you're busy on the wrong things and you don't know they're the wrong things, everyone's like going to work and trying to do the best they can possibly do. But it's this whole, we talked about this, this whole 10x is easier than 2x thinking is if you just said to someone, like, I need you to double what you're doing next year, like double your quota, people would just be like, what? Because it's like, you're just going to expect me to go and achieve more. But what you're saying is we are collectively going to build a load of new skills and capability so that all of us can achieve 10 times the productivity together. So it's like, we're all going to get 10 times better. And that's exciting rather than I need you to go and improve your productivity by this percentage because the business needs it, which I think a lot of people do when they just increase quotas without that why or the enablement or the collective, like bringing the people with them on the journey. So I really love how you've approached that. You mentioned about, it's been a bit of a journey that you've been on in your career. For people who don't already have the pleasure of knowing you, James, tell us a bit about your journey to be the VP of EMEA.
Yeah. I kind of take you right back to sort of my first entrance into the workspace. So I kind of stumbled out of university, having done economics at university, thinking I wanted to be some sort of financial analyst. There weren't many jobs kicking back then. It was sort of just at the end of sort of 2010 time, and the recession had happened then. And the thing that kept coming back was sales jobs. And I hadn't ever thought about working in sales, but then when I kind of looked around, I realized that my dad, my brother, my uncles, they're all in sales. They might not have salesperson in their job title, but they are all part of like the revenue element of their businesses that they worked within. And I was lucky enough to like get placed into a sort of 100-person consultancy in this world called business intelligence. I didn't know what business intelligence was there, but it was, it became big data that, is then analytics and now sort of bled into AI. And it was actually, really lucked out that I got, that I entered into a market that was, then growing rapidly over the next sort of 15 years or so. And in a really strong cultured consultancy as well. It was like a really, sort of they hired like smart, humble people, so like really intelligent people, but really sort of selfless people, which I was really lucky. And I got hooked on this thing around helping people use data to make better decisions. I sort of saw that really early on in my career, saw the spark that gets ignited when people see data for the first time. And so that passion sort of took hold of me pretty quickly. And my career's been pretty much about that. So I stayed with that organization for like 4 or 5 years, did really well, learned loads, not much sort of formal sales training. It was kind of like figure it out as I go along, but I kind of enjoyed that space to, and it helped me maybe progress a little bit quicker than you would in maybe a more structured environment, because I could be a little bit more entrepreneurial. And as I said, I was surrounded by great people. sort of stayed there for 4 or 5 years, and then one of my mentors tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Look, I've just joined a company called Tableau. There's something pretty special happening over here." So I joined Tableau. They were about a year after their IPO, just a bit of a rocket ship at the time, and I had a really good run there. I had sort of 6 promotions in 8 years. Went from being a enterprise AE up to running the UK and Ireland in my last role there. And during that time, we sort of grew. We got acquired by Salesforce. We got integrated into Salesforce. So all of a sudden went from like a 3,000 person company to a 70,000 person company, which was a bit of a shock to the system. But again, like learned the brilliant fundamentals that have made Salesforce a great company. And yeah, had a really good run. And then, but I realized that I wasn't built for 70,000 person businesses. I sort of craved that building phase a little bit more. And I was sort of looking from afar about like which product in the analytics market is going to really grab AI, and that's the next big disruptor. And that's what led me to ThoughtSpot. I really saw how quickly they innovated since generative AI sort of came on the scene a couple of years ago, and it really inspired me to want to be part of the business. And again, so I've been at ThoughtSpot for just coming up to I think this has just finished my 5th quarter there. And again, stumbled into a business full of smart, humble people that like instill a selfless excellence culture, and it's been a brilliant sort of last 5 quarters being running the EMEA function. So yeah, that's sort of a bit about my journey.
Yeah, it's a really interesting background. I like what you said about that you started off in quite an unstructured environment. So like your ability to be resourceful and to collaborate. You also had the freedom to take ownership, and then ultimately you were judged on results. So you were kind of like building what I call the core capabilities of an entrepreneur, and a multiplier, which a lot of people don't get if it's like they're working in a, like you say, potentially one of the bigger businesses where their role is so defined, their goals are so defined, their success is so defined that you kind of have to do it in a particular way. Because it's the way the business has been built, and ultimately shareholder expectations are the most important thing. So you have less ability to be an artist, I suppose. It's much more about the sort of science of sales. But I also know that, there'll be a bunch of really good things that people do learn. I guess what would be useful, really interesting to understand is because I mainly focus within the sort of startup scale up space, very rarely in the larger businesses. Though I worked with those businesses for years when we were an outsourced go-to-market agency. Most of our clients were 100 million turnover plus. That was like the minimum line to get in to be able to work with us. What were some of the best things that you've taken from your career that kind of like underpin these first principles that you now bring into your role today?
Really good question. So I think one of the main things is that it all starts with people. Like it all starts with people. If you get the people thing right, and you can get the right talent in your team, a lot of everything else can figure itself out. That was one of the things that I learned probably about 2 or 3 years into my sales leadership career, after I'd made a couple of iffy hires, like everyone does. And it was actually a leader came in just after we were bought by Salesforce. Salesforce have a planning framework that they use called a V2MOM, which stands for vision, values, measures, methods, obstacles, and measures. And it's how they build their annual planning, and so the organization has a V2MOM, every team has a V2MOM, and then you kind of have individual V2MOMs as well. And it's actually a really good framework for just like putting a plan together on a piece of paper. And actually, that's one of the things that I've then taken and applied at ThoughtSpot as well. But it was actually a leader came in and said, your first method, your first thing, your most important pillar of your business has always got to be your people. Like, how do you recruit the best people? How do you retain the best people? How do you enable them? How do you, just make sure that your top talent is really, really, really happy? And if you get that pillar right, the rest of it you can kind of figure out. So that's been something that I've tried to focus on and try to put a bit as I move into ThoughtSpot, try and put a bit more definition around that, around like what does our top talent look like, and what are we looking for during the recruiting process, and then how do we share a lot of what that top talent's doing. So we came up with an acronym at ThoughtSpot called THEM, that our top talent are talented, humble, energetic, and magnetic. You know, those are the characteristics of the top people in our business. And so when we're interviewing, you know, do they have them? You know, and we're always looking at that lens. But then also, I'm also a really big believer that there's like excellence that happens in our business every single day by various different people. Like some people might be really good at picking up the phone and cold calling. Some people might be really good at executing a proof of concept. Some people might be really good at putting together a first meeting deck. Whatever it is excellence that happens everywhere. So how do we capture all that excellence and enable the team about this is what excellence looks like, and then give them a bunch of assets that they can then use in order to get themselves 80-90% of the way down the road. And I see AI as a massive enabler of that, by the way, around like how do we capture like the best first meeting decks that we do that resonate the most, and then make sure that that's like the starting point, and use AI to generate a lot of the assets that we do. So I think starting with people, making sure we've got good definition, trying to capture the excellence about what we do. And then a really big thing that I learned again during my time more at Salesforce was just the importance of pipeline. If you get pipeline right as a software organization, if you're generating enough and you've got enough coverage and it's a high enough pipe quality, a lot it can pave over a lot of cracks, shall we say. If you've got good coverage, you can just make the right decisions. You're not trying to force things when you shouldn't be forcing things. And that was something that Salesforce really brought, that sort of stepped up a level, and that I learned was like, you need to be measuring, you need to be analyzing, you need to be understanding your pipeline every single day. And if you are, then again, a lot of the things that can be difficult become a little bit easier. So those would probably be the key things.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. If you've got great people and great pipeline, there's a bit of a cure-all, right?
It kind of is. Not to say that there isn't a bunch of difficult stuff, but like if you got those two things sorted, and as long as your product's half decent, which you like to think ours is, then a lot of things feel a little bit easier.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? Yeah, but it's like it's the opposite. It's also true, right? If you don't have the best people who are capable of, you know, solving problems and building the right culture, and they work together, and then you're under where you need to be in terms of a pipeline, then the behaviors that will be driven inside the business will be poor. So anyway, what I would love to understand, let's talk about this topic, right? So you're working on this thing of 10xing productivity across your business. Tell us about the journey you've been on so far. I love when we first spoke about how you kind of like reverse engineered this and looked at it as a kind of a bit of a process. So talk us through how you've been thinking about going on this 10x productivity journey.
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I did was went and searched whether anyone had done it before, you know, rather than reinventing the wheel. Like, has anyone been on this 10x journey? Actually, not a huge amount of material out there. There was an article from a guy called Hayes Davis that had written a Substack post on, you know, could you do it? And the approach that he went through was understanding the math behind it. So you've obviously got levers in your sales process that if you dial them up can lead to productivity. So you've got the number of new business meetings you've then got your win rate, and you've got your average sale price. So you've got your three levers. And so, okay, well, can you book 10 times the amount of new business meetings that you do? It's quite difficult. You'd need to probably, how would you apply AI there? Well, you'd probably just end up spamming a bunch of people, and that isn't probably going to lead to a lot of success. Then there's sort of like increasing your win rate by 10x, a 10x multiple. Again, really difficult thing to do. And then there's increasing your average sale price by 10x. And the conclusion he came to is, you know, doing one of those things dialing up one of those things by 10x is difficult. But actually in the aggregate, like you can probably dial up the first thing by 3x, the second thing by 5x, and the third thing by 2x, and that in itself would add up to 10x productivity. So he sort of came to the conclusion that, yeah, maybe it is possible. So the first thing that I did was go and analyze our data, analyze our baselines, like what's our new business booking rate, what's our win rate, what's our ASP. And actually, the first thing that I found was that in certain areas of our business, when we have tighter ICP, we are already 3 times more productive than we are on average. So that was like the first eureka moment around, oh, hold on. In this industry, at this employee size, if they use this bit of technology, we're 3 times more effective than we are across our organization. So then I went through, okay, well, how would I use AI to help that? Well, okay, how can I use AI to figure out how many companies exist in that segment? And there's actually more than I thought. And then how might we address them? And would our team run out of accounts quickly? No, they wouldn't. And actually, so that in itself, that sort of the first sort of rabbit hole I went down was all about sort of ICP definition. I then sort of extrapolated myself back out of that and said, okay, I've kind of done the classic sales thing. I've seen something interesting and gone deep on it, like a magpie. Actually, let's reverse out. Let's think about our sales process. We have, the number of new business meetings we have our sales process, and then we have our ASP. How do I look at our process in each one of those areas today, and the things that impact each of those areas today? What are my sales team doing? And then how could I reimagine this with AI? So that's what I did. I was on an aeroplane to Spain with the family, actually, and I've got 2 young children, and both of them were asleep. So I pulled out a piece of paper and just started writing down what are all the tasks that all of our sales team do, and I came up with like 30 different things that they do, and then I built them into kind of a process, and then mapped them across these sort of levers in our business, and basically figured out there's a whole bunch of stuff that they did that was very manual, that wasn't customer facing. And actually, probably the same with every organization, I'd love my team to spend more time in front of customers. And actually, if all they did every day was be at the point of execution with the customer, and then everything else behind the scenes was automated, and we used a bunch of agents in order to get rid of all that manual work, and all they did was focus on the customer, that's where we'd start step changing our productivity. So basically what I did was I mapped out the process of in each one of those levers, and then went back to kind of first principles thinking about how would we do this with AI, and basically came up with a whole bunch of agents and automation that we can go and build, that will help us that will help us step change our productivity. And then started layering on, okay, well, what tooling do you need to do that, and what tooling do we have? And then, what might have the biggest impact versus, the ease of implementation, because some of this stuff will be, actually pretty easy to implement. Some of this stuff will be really hard. And you probably came up with like 20 agents we want to go and build. If we can go build the first 3, what's the impact of that going to be? And so I did a whole bunch of stuff like that, still in very much like hypothesis mode, I guess, sort of theory mode. And then actually I went back to my CEO and said, look, I've done a bunch of thinking. I actually think that your 10x thing we can do. And he said, cool, go do a bit of it. And he pointed me in the direction of our VP of product that leads all of our AI capability in our product. Great guy. And then, so I had a session with him, and he said, look, go build some stuff. Like you're in the theory world, which is great. Go build some stuff. So very similar to what you said earlier on around the introduction that you got, and you're going to go build your first agent. I went and did that. I went and downloaded a trial of a software product and entered a bunch of stuff that I wanted to do, and it was all around this. It was all around this ICP thing, around like how would I get high intent account signals from accounts that fit in our bullseye ICP. How do I figure out when they're ready to buy? And there's a whole bunch of signals that we can get from LinkedIn posts and Reddit posts and G2 reviews and things like that. And how would I get those signals to really flag when an account is ready to buy, and then automate that through into our top of our funnel? So I built an agent, and that was a real eye-opening moment, because I was like, oh wow, I can build an agent. James Smith with no technical skill can and just a big mouth can go and build an agent. And that's that was again like a real eye-opening moment around, oh right, this stuff is possible. All we need is like the time to go do it, and we can actually step change this stuff here. So that was a real eye-opening moment as well. So yeah, that's kind of the process we've gone through. We've actually built a couple of agents. We built our first agent that I built. There's then one of our account managers then built a voice agent that he'd been thinking about, and sort of launched that. And then we're going through a process. We were at the start of our financial year, so we're now going through a process of doing a bunch of, in the next couple of weeks, going to do a bunch of hackathons to get the sales team hands-on with this, and go through that sort of journey that I've been on, realize that they too can build some of this stuff, and then obviously going through the process with our ops team about, like, you know, what resource do we need, and how do we spin up a team to actually go and build a bunch of automation across our systems, and build a bunch of these agents, and start doing it in a bit more of a productionized manner, rather than just a few salespeople fiddling around with a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I love it. So you've been vibe coding. How does it
Yeah.
feel?
Again, really empowering. Like, really empowering. It's like, oh, this isn't just for, you know, people with PhDs. And I guess it's a similar journey that I've been on with data in my life. Like, for most people, especially 15 years ago when I entered the market, analyzing data was for people with PhDs and data scientists. And my whole career has been about, how do I bring that experience to, you know, Joe or Jane blogs in your business, who is a marketing manager or a sales AE, and they want to use data to make better decisions. That's been what my career's been about how do we lower the barrier to entry? How do we make it easier? And I really feel that's why it's so empowering for me with AI, is because I think that's what AI does for a bunch of stuff that I didn't think was possible, around like building systems and building websites and all the stuff that you can now use AI for. It's all about that. Used to be you had to be a developer and you had to have computer science skills, and it's all about lowering the barrier to entry for people without technical skills, and that inspires me and gets me pretty passionate.
Yeah, 100% right. I think it's fascinating, isn't it? It's like we had, again, Jacob Warwick came on the podcast, and he said AI is underhyped, and it was like he loves saying contrarian things, but I was like, really? And in our tech bubble, it's all you see, right? And it's all people really talk about. But how much are they actually using it for its true capabilities, versus they're still using it the way they were a year ago for sort of, just some of the tasks that they do. And we're really happy with it, because suddenly, what used to take me a day to write up in terms of like all this proposal notes and stuff is now, 5 minutes. And I've trained my GPT and it sounds a bit like me and all that sort of stuff. Are we fundamentally asking the question, like, how can this help to completely revolutionize the way that we're working, or completely innovate this thing, or go and give me way more of what I actually want to go and be doing, and delete all this stuff that I don't want to be doing? So this whole like vibe coding thing, I do believe that probably, I don't know what percentage of people in your business, maybe it's a good question for me to ask, but like, if you think about your organization today, how many people are already vibe coding their own capabilities in AI?
I think it's a really small percentage. I think lots of people are playing lip service. And I think this is the same. This isn't. It's across all business, all organizations. I think there's a lot of lip service to, look at all these capabilities, and isn't this great? I think there's a handful of people that have really picked it up and are taking it to the next level. And I, I've kind of, as I've gone on this journey, I've kind of been, speaking to a bunch of peers about, like, what are you doing? Like, trying to borrow some of their ideas, really. And there are a couple of people doing some interesting things, but the general feedback that I get is that people are sleeping on AI. People are really sleeping on the capability and what it can do. And I really think that, again, people have sort of said, what do I do today and how can AI kind of help that? So I create presentations. How can AI help that? I actually think, like, yes, there is a whole bunch of efficiency gains there, but it's the effectiveness gains where the real step changes come from. And that's where you've got to really do some deep thinking about, okay, here's what we do today. What could it look like if I reimagined that? And that takes some thinking and some time to do, and then some time to figure out how you do it and how you're actually going to implement it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally in the middle of that right now, so I can really empathize with it. But it's like I'm going, right, I've got a session with Justin. But remind me to send you Justin Parnell's YouTube channel, because he's got a session on vibe coding, which would be really good for you to roll out with your team. I'll maybe put it in the show notes of this podcast. But I'm going, right, well, I've got this possibility now. I'm going to have like one of the world's best experts helping me to build an AI agent. Wow, what does that look like? And I've gone through this whole process working with like my podcast co-host and my wife and a couple of other friends to say, what do you think I should build? And everyone has a different idea. And I've got lots of different ideas. And I think it comes back to this principle, which is, if you ask the question, how can we 2x? How can we grow by, let's say, 20, 30%? You get so many answers that it obviously isn't a very good question. Because if you get limitless opportunities and options that you could do, it's not focusing our mind, and it's not separating the signal from the noise. Whereas if you ask the question, what would an AI agent or app that means that we 10x our productivity, maybe 10x our reach, 10x our average order value, 10x our win rate, 10x our number of new meetings, the amount of opportunities and options that would actually go and achieve that goal will be way smaller. Way smaller. So I think that maybe it's a lesson, or certainly a lesson that I only had this like three days ago, but is, if when you're asking the question, what can I use AI for, you're getting unlimited possibilities, change the question to be something bigger. And I just wonder, when you're thinking about how to utilize AI in your business, is there like a guiding set of questions or a way that you're thinking about how we use AI that would be useful for people to like get inside your head so they can bring some of that into their thinking?
Yeah. But by the way, coming back to something you said, I always think it's a really good barometer of an idea if you're going to check with your wife and talk to your wife about it when you come home. I've got this thing at work that, like, what do you think I should do? I always think that's my barometer anyway. If I'm talking to my wife about it, it means I'm excited by it. And you certainly heard me wax lyrical about AI and 10xing over the last couple of months.
When she's speaking to her friends, what does he do? Something about 10xing productivity through AI. I don't really understand it, but
Yeah,
it's really excited.
yeah. So the questions. So again, I think it's all about trying to facilitate that kind of first principles thinking, but like process engineering around, when someone does come up with an idea, it's about, okay, good idea, but let's take a step back. How would that fit into what's your process today? Talk to me about the time, effort, effectiveness you have in that process. And does that idea 10x either your efficiency or your effectiveness? Or is it something that's 10% better than you're doing today? And so it's always about trying to get them to think about, to reverse engineer what they're doing today. Because a lot of people just do what they do today, whether it be solution engineering or customer success or salespeople. Like, I wake up, try and get a list of accounts that I should be picking up the phone to. I find some people on LinkedIn, I write some emails, I send them out, and it's almost you're through into the automation of your job, and actually taking people to stop what they're doing and think about their process as a process, and re-engineering that to where can I get the most leverage? Where's the thing that I'm doing that I can remove as much today, and how can that get me the most leverage that I can? There was a quote. I was listening to one of the podcasts. One of the people who's really stretching the boundary on this is a guy called Kyle Norton. He's the chief revenue officer of a company called owner.com. And any of his content is like excellent. And he was talking about a quote that was, AI has removed the value of 99% of the things that I do today because it can just automate it. But it is 100x the value of the 1% that's left over, because that 1% that's left over is the thing that is the real differentiator, and that's the thing I can build leverage on. And the real thing that struck me in there was, like, I've got, as I say, I've got a brilliant team. They're awesome when they're in front of customers. Like, we have a really good sales process and a really good proof of value process that leads to like awesome results for customers. And when we're in that moment, engaging on that thing, our sales team and our go-to-market team are superb. But how do I get them spending all their time there? How do I get, my sales team, they wake up, and instead of having to go and find the people to pick up the phone to and write the messaging and things like that, how do they wake up and they've already got 6 meetings in their diary with highly engaged prospects that are the right time to buy? If I can achieve that, I truly believe we'll whether we'll get to 10x, that might get us to 5x, but that would really step change the experience that they've got today. And so I think it's about trying to get people to reimagine what a world could look like and what the possibilities could be if AI was automating all the stuff that isn't the bit where they add the most value, and then using AI to leverage to like build as much leverage as you can in that area. So it's about helping people take that step back and do that thinking, and it's amazing to see those cogs turning when they do, because generally the first idea will be that'll make us 10% more effective, and then once you get them to take the step back, like, you quickly get to ideas that really can help you 2x, 3x, 4x.
Yeah, exactly. I think they want it. They want it as well, right? Customer-facing teams want to be spending time in front of customers. And I can't remember exactly the percentage, but I think it was 79%. There's a Salesforce report, like 70% of sellers' time is spent on non-selling activities. And I'm going, almost like 80%. I mean, 20% of your time is actually spent in front of customers. And how effective is that time? So, I mean, just like if you can just increase the amount of time they're spending in front of customers, if they're the right customers and they go in well prepared, then the customer will get a better experience too. And everyone wants that.
I saw that stat as well, a similar stat to that, which very similar. But actually it also talked about, but in AI native organizations, it's more like 50% of their time. So even in AI native organizations that have been spun up in the last couple of years, they've really reduced it down. Now it's still 50% too much probably, but it's really narrowed it down, which in itself would lead to lots of productivity gains, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's, and customers want it too, right? It's like, they're going to go on this whole buyer's journey themselves, where they're not having to speak to as many people to go and get what they want. They can do a lot of that thinking and research and scoping themselves, but they want to speak to someone. They want to have that relationship, particularly if you're talking about like large order values. Obviously, like, a lot of transactional SMB type businesses will be transactional in the same way that like a lot of purchases now, you might have 10 years ago questioned a sort of purchase online over like £100. Now people will gladly spend, thousands of pounds online without ever speaking to a person. But if you're going to go and spend 30 grand, let's say buy a car or buy a house, you want to speak to someone and you want to see the house and you want to kick the tire and, and like look for cracks in the building. You want that actual like physical experience, and I think the value of relationships is so much higher. But it means that we really have to level up how good we are as people in like helping customers, understanding them, being good at what we do, asking the right questions, so that time where we do spend with people is high value, because so much of their questions can be answered now just through technology. Maybe this is like quite a big question, but how do you see the role of salespeople in the modern AI world?
So I think the thing that AI can't take away is that person-to-person contact. And so I think that's what with this journey I'm trying to maximize is how do I maximize that? How do I maximize the time that the team spend in front of the customer? Because I think it was the same with like, if you think about the hyper waves of disruption that have happened in the industry, like, nothing's been a bigger impact than the internet. And there was there's theories at the end of the 90s that, everything was just going to be bought on the internet, and therefore you wouldn't need salespeople. And actually, that's been the opposite of what's happened, because what's happened is this industry called SaaS has created, and there's more technology salespeople today than there ever has been. Maybe not ever has been. Maybe a couple of years ago there was more than there ever has been. But yeah, there's it's actually been an accelerant to that, because people realize the impact that these technology can have, but making it work with the specific environment that business might have and the specific goals that organization is trying to achieve is a complex thing. And it isn't just about a one-size-fits-all bit of technology approach. Like I was saying earlier, so much of this AI journey is about the change management, about bringing people with you, about all of the people elements of the change. And I think that's what, if I think about, an AI-enabled sales team that's delivering 10x productivity, so much more of where the salesperson's time is going to be spent is in that person-to-person contact, and that is going to become even more important and emphasized, rather than filling in a bunch of Salesforce fields that in itself can be automated, and you can just get AI to do the rest of that bit. So I think it's similar to the way that the sort of internet wave led to more need for better technology, better capability, and therefore more need for that sales interaction. I think AI will do the same, because every organization will be on a different maturity model with it, a different layer of maturity. They all have different infrastructures, they all have different data, they all have different goals they're trying to achieve. And I think that's where people come in to make that complexity more simple and simplify that complexity. And I think that's what people are good at. And then managing all the change management and all the politics and all the things that need to go on in an organization as well.
It makes so much sense. It makes me think of just like a really fundamental principle, which is businesses want to work with businesses that have wicked people. It's like there's nothing nicer than going, I know I'm working with a business where I know the people love it, and I know they're looked after well, and I know that they're excellent, and I know that I'm going to get this type of experience, and maybe whatever the values are, but maybe it'll be really fun, and like these are thought leaders, but like that, and they stick around. All that stuff that was like, true when we were like working in businesses where like the churn of account managers was a problem for clients. If your business is so focused on product that the people are like the secondary or tertiary like thing that you value inside your business, like you say, people being first, any business that prioritizes technology and profit over the standard of the people that they hire and the culture of the people that they have in their business, I think will really struggle, because they will lose that differentiator.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
No, I completely agree. I think what AI does is it really accentuates human qualities. It accentuates the like human centricity and the things that are special that you can't write down on a piece of paper and automate, essentially. And I think that's that's where there are people that are sort of bullish about the future, and people that have a alternative viewpoint that we're all going to be unemployed and the Terminator is going to happen and, all that sort of thing. I'm very much around actually what it's going to do is get rid of a whole bunch of stuff that we don't like doing and really accentuate the human-to-human contact. And so the organizations that have that as a USP and have that as a competitive advantage will be the ones that can thrive.
Yeah, 100%. Another topic I'd love to talk about, because it's very close to my heart, I know it's close to yours as well. I see you regularly posting about this on LinkedIn, which is hiring. And what's really interesting to me, the question in my mind is, you're like reframing the way that people think and opening up this world of possibilities in terms of what they can do and how they think about utilizing AI and how much ownership they have to actually go and bring ideas and innovation into their business. So it sounds like you're hiring less on what they've done and their experience, because, after sort of 15 years in SaaS, if someone did 1.5 million in quota at this sort of average order value in this technology, then they're going to be successful in our business, right? But in the modern world, actually, it's more like, how can you be resourceful around using this technology and how can you collaborate as a team? There are different things that are becoming more prominent. I'm not saying that experience doesn't matter and track record and base skills don't matter and relationships don't matter, but how, when you're thinking about hiring, is all of this affecting what you look for?
Yeah. So I think at its simplest form, I'm now just screening for it. And what I mean by that is I probably 6 months ago wouldn't have asked the question, give me a perspective on AI and where you've applied it to deliver more productivity in your role. I do ask that now. And I want people to have done that thinking. And you can easily tell the people that are like where I was a couple of months ago, where you're playing lip service to it, and the people that are really, oh no, yeah, I've done the thinking and I've built some stuff and I've done a bit of vibe coding and I've built an agent. Like you can just tell by basically their eyes either light up or they don't. And so at the very simplest form, it's one of the questions I now ask and I'm looking for. And if they haven't gone on that journey, that's kind of okay. But then I might go and dig into how this person learns and how this person develops themselves, and do they have the capability to go on this journey? That might be like the area I'll dig into that in a little bit more detail. Because if they haven't got there yet, that's kind of okay, because I hadn't got there yet, and before my CEO challenged me. But like, do I have it in me to go on that journey? I'd like to think I do, and that's what I'm looking for from other people. But yeah, to your point on like experience versus sort of the softer skills, I think that's really critical anyway. I think I always think it's really important to hire for the characteristics of the person. As the kind of the experience gets you through the recruitment screening. That I've worked at this company for this long, and that gets your CV looked at by a recruiter and maybe into a conversation with the hiring manager. Once you're in that room, you're kind of only in that room if you've got a certain level of experience, and then it all comes down to the characteristics. And again, it's something I did a little bit of thinking on before I joined this role, around like what's the characteristics that are most important to me. And I use an acronym, especially for salespeople. I use an acronym called SPARK, because I've often interviewed people, and then when people have gone, "Oh, what do you think about that person?" I've said, "Oh, they've just got that spark, that spark that those special people have." And then I realised that that's a really rubbish thing to say, because like people might not know what that is.
Yeah.
I thought about the most brilliant salespeople that I worked with, and came up with this acronym that they're smart, passionate, authentic, resilient, and keen. And those are the things that I think the most brilliant salespeople that I've worked with, and those are the characteristics they have in abundance. So those are the things I screen on. But then I'm now thinking, how can they use those smarts to apply to AI? How can they use some of that passion to apply to 10xing using AI? I'm using that lens as I interview people now.
I love it. There's a statistic that I was researching the other day, but when I was building my multiplier matrix model that I know we spoke about, only 15% of organizations have defined the attitudes and behaviors that make someone a high culture fit.
Yeah.
15%,
Doesn't
which is
surprise me.
you've gone through this thinking, right? But it was like, it wasn't, as you say, it was like when you were joining ThoughtSpot. So like you put thought into this thing that you've been saying because you realized like what the answer to your question didn't give you the level of confidence and certainty that you wanted to, right? Same for me. Someone asked me like, what's your definition of an A player? And I went back to this definition I learned in Scaling Up. I only read Scaling Up 2 years ago because my old CEO recommended I read it. It's not like I have been carrying this definition of an A player for all my life, but everyone says A player, but it's bullshit. What does A player mean? Like everyone has an opinion on what it means, but everyone has a different definition. That's a massive problem. And does anyone want to be called a B player? And what's a C player? Like, what does it mean? So I've tried to like recategorize it, but it's because I realized I was saying this thing and I was posting about it on all sorts of stuff. And I realized there was no like meat to it. There was no substance to it. And I needed to go and level up. The other really fascinating statistic is that Sequoia did some research and they worked out that 89% of mishires are due to attitudinal and cultural misalignment. So it's not capability, it's not skill, it's not experience. It's fundamentally the attitudes and behaviors were off. And so your spark is all about character and it's about attitudes and behaviors. And I love that because I guess that if you're hiring people that have all got, there's a set of alignment around the way that they are, the way that they think, the way they behave, their values, even if they have vastly different capabilities and experiences and things that they are passionate about, when they come together, that spark multiplies, right?
Yeah.
And like they bring out the best in each other and people want to work with people with high amount of spark. I just love it. When I'm talking about this, I'm wondering what's coming to mind.
Yeah. It's also the other bit is if they have those attributes and they don't have like the skills that you need, as long as you've got good leaders, we can teach them the skills. And if they have those attributes, they'll learn the skills quickly and they'll become experts at the skills. So even if they do have gaps in their experience, they never put together an account plan. Well, if they've got those spark attributes, teaching them how to do an account plan and then them actually going and doing it will, that's not a hard thing to do. Yeah. But if they haven't got those attributes, it is really hard because their attitude isn't in the right place, and it's really difficult to develop those things more. Like the actual skills of doing a job, as long as they've got the right characteristics, you can teach people those skills and they can learn them. So
100%. But I think it's the leader's job in a business to define what those things look like. So everyone has a common lens, because if everyone has their own lens, like you say, you bring spark into your business, someone else has got core, someone else has got A player, B player, and then we're trying to make a decision on people, it will always come down to bias and who has the strongest voice, right? Rather than going, oh, look, we have a framework for going to analyze these things, which I think is really powerful. Also, you can set that standard from the front. We expect in our business these behaviors. Now, what's your view on that, right? It's like when you ask that AI question, if someone said, oh, I've not really done anything to do with AI yet, and you said, well, why is that? Tell me about your thoughts towards AI. And they went, AI is bullshit. It's the devil. You were like, well, you're not going to work in our business because it's not really about your attitude towards AI. It's about your attitude towards this amazing capability. You're seeing it as you're dismissing it, or you see it as a threat. And if you're going to have that mentality towards growth in our business, you're not going to fit, because everyone else is here is looking at the world from a set of possibilities, not this like fixed mindset. And it's called like openness and growth mindset thing that's so important. But AI is a wonderful thing that's it's so relevant, it's so accessible for people that there's no excuse to not be using it. And if you ask me that question, and like let's say you asked me in an interview, hey Richard, what's your AI tech stack? And I got embarrassed by it. I was like, oh, I really want to know more about this James guy. He asked me a really good question. And I would love to have a good answer to that question. And I think if you ask people questions like that in an interview, regardless of whether the answer blows you away with what they've already done, but you can see whether someone gets defensive or whether, like you say, the eyes light up. And I think that sometimes if you expose a vulnerability in people, that gap will equal value to them that they'll want to join your business.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they don't get asked that in their business today.
Yeah. And that is the other thing is I'd hope that the fact that we're trying to do this 10x thinking and go on this 10x journey makes us a more attractive proposition for an AE to come and join, because hopefully they'll see that there's a bit of a growth mindset and there's ambition and hopefully some investment into some areas that are going to make the salesperson more effective and ultimately more successful, and hopefully also allow them to focus on the thing that they love doing. Because every good salesperson I've come across, the thing that they love doing is engaging with customers and helping them solve their problems. Yet, as you said, 20-30% of people's time is actually spent there. And so if you're in an organization where 70-80% of your time is spent there, hopefully you're going to have that much more of an enjoyable job as well. So yeah, that's the additional benefit.
It will be. And also this podcast will live in the internet, and it will be accessible by large language models. And whether the people are consuming this in a couple of months' time when we release it, or whether they're reviewing this in like a year's time, I guarantee what will happen, because we do this all the time when we work with clients from the podcast, is they'll watch this episode, and they'll have done their research. So they'll come in and go, "Hey, James, I saw you on the podcast with Richard. You talked about the fact that you're looking for these 5 criteria around Spark, and that them is really important for your business. I've had some thoughts around it. Would you be happy for us to use this time to discuss it?" You'd be like, "Oh my goodness."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You were like, "Yeah, let's definitely do that," rather than, or they can say, "You inspired me actually to go and vibe code a tool in my old business."
Yeah.
Well, I got told I wasn't able to use it because the business didn't want to think about it. So I wanted to speak to you because maybe you would appreciate my resourcefulness.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. But final question then, James, would be like, if we think about this whole goal to, growth, if we think about the whole goal to 10x productivity and this whole utilization of AI to level up your business and make everyone better and spend more time doing what they're doing, what are you most excited about with this future goal that you're working towards?
I'm most excited about the impact it's going to have on my AEs. I think their role will be that much more enjoyable. And hopefully we can do it during a period where the targets are a little bit lagging and it takes the time for the targets to catch up with their success. That's if we're getting it right. But I think they're going to spend more time in front of customers, helping customers solve problems. And they're going to see, if they're spending more time there, they're going to see the impact that we're having with customers. And I think the people that we work with get really, really excited when they see brilliant customer stories and massive impacts with customers. And I guess a whole bunch of what we're going to do is going to maximize the time they spend doing that. And that's going to be awesome. So that's what I'm most excited about. I'm most excited about that. And I hope that we look back and are like, wow, look at the journey we've come on as individuals, as an organization, as a sales function, as a go-to-market team. I hope, in 12 months' time, in 24 months' time, we can look back and say, wow, look at that step change we've had. Because, I think go back to it in some of the things I talked about earlier. Like, I love building stuff. And, I really think that if we go and deliver on some of the early things that we've already delivered upon and build upon them, we're going to have built something pretty cool. And so that's exciting as well.
Oh, I can totally see it happening. I think that not only will you attract some great people will be successful, it will then create lots of opportunity for people. So a lot of people that you are hiring now and working will develop in your business, and then some will move on and do their own thing. And I think that if they're part of this journey now, they'll always look back and say, we were part of that 10x leap in ThoughtSpot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
like, being part of the alumni that did this amazing thing.
We can all get tattoos and, have a secret handshake about it.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, enough said on that. Yeah. But James, thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely awesome. If someone wanted to get hold of you and have a conversation, maybe they're building this themselves, maybe they're interested in joining the business, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
LinkedIn. Pretty active on LinkedIn. Check it most days. So yeah, just drop me a message on there.
Amazing. James, thank you so much for your chi gen.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Perfect. Everyone else, we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this conversation, we've got a newsletter called Growth Magnet on LinkedIn, where we take the best insights from all of these episodes and turn them into bite-sized format for you to enjoy.